I have a couple of, lots and lots of beautiful, wonderful memories of my time at IIT. Of course, the academics are excellent, but what makes everything is the hostel life and your friends and students around you, and you learn so much from them, not just about academia, but about other stuff. So, for example, I was in Hostel 3. And a small group of my friends were good swimmers, and they used to go every day or 2 or 3 times a week to the lake near Hostel 3. And I was not a swimmer, but I joined me too. So why don't you just come into the lake and we'll teach you swimming? And I said, no, I'll drown. And they said, don't worry about it. We'll just take care of it. We'll take care of you. Don't worry. We'll push you up. And so I just jumped in with them into the deep end of the lake there, and they kind of pushed me up, and I was flailing around, and I drank a lot of water. But after 2 or 3 times I did that, I learned swimming, which was a great lesson to try different things and to be adventurous and to learn from others around you. So things like that that was a wonderful memory. For me, another great memory was, during my time there, this was 72 to 77, Mood Indigo was started then. It did not exist before then. A small group of people at IIT started it. And I vividly remember being exposed, in-depth exposure to Indian classical music during Mood Indigo. I remember seeing Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia at night at the Convocation Hall for several hours, and I just was amazed at the talent and how extraordinary it was. It just drew me in immediately. I remember a second night seeing Pandit Shivkumar Sharma on the Santoor. Again, it was just amazing. So you get exposure to these types of things. We had all kinds of interesting activities. Things I was involved in. I was involved in. We used to play carom in the mess lounge at the hostel, and then of course we had. I'm sure it exists to this day. We had the inter-hostel Kali competitions from yelling on the roof. We used to go to hiking. We used to do quite a lot of hiking outside of a small group of us go hiking outside of IIT. And the Gymkhana was there at the time as well, and so some of us would go to the Gymkhana from time to time. So I was involved in all of those things. I was never a very good athlete or anything like that, but I enjoyed playing different things and trying different things. So mostly I remember things like table tennis and carom and cricket in the hostel. Right. So the engineering degree was very, very helpful, and I think as I said earlier, is a great discipline to teach you to work hard, to focus, to be rigorous in your thinking and problem solving and approach to anything, to view things from first principles. This idea of deep problem solving and problem structuring and addressing anything with an open eye and questioning your beliefs and assumptions. That is stuff that I learned through my study of engineering. However, what I discovered as I was, my course was a 5-year course at the time. What I discovered towards my 4th year is that I was less interested in engineering per se. I actually liked maths and physics very much. And so at one point I was contemplating coming, and sort of doing an advanced degree in maths or physics, doing a master's and a PhD in mathematics or in physics. And I thought about that quite hard. And then I remember one day I was looking at the Times of India, and I remember noticing that, the politics, the business stuff, the economics, the social issues, these are things that I just didn't comprehend. I did not have a way to understand them and to engage in them and to really appreciate them. And I said to myself more and more, do I want to go ahead and do an advanced degree in something that is very specific and very narrow and very focusing, like maths or physics, and do a master's or PhD there? Or do I want to do a degree that is much more broadening, that gives you a much broader view of how the world works, and do an MBA? The nice thing about doing an MBA is it gives you a very, very broad world view and allows you to decide later on in life what you want to focus on. You don't need to decide right away what you want to focus on. And so, that's what got me interested in the idea of pursuing an MBA. And I thought the idea of coming to the US was appealing at the time because, this is 1977. The world was much not as connected as it is today. I had never left India. I spent all my life in India, really on the west coast of India, Mumbai, Gujarat, etc. So the idea of leaving India and coming to a completely different country was also a very interesting kind of learning adventure. And so those days you could apply directly for an MBA. You did not need work experience. These days you do need work experience for an MBA. But I applied directly for an MBA to 4 or 5 schools in the US, and I got into the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, which is obviously a very, very good school. It's a top 10 business school in the US. And I came directly, I remember in August, after graduating in June or July, I came directly in August to do my MBA in the US. And I'm very glad I made the decision to continue with advanced studies with an MBA, not with engineering or not with maths or physics. Not to say that that's a bad choice for anyone. It's a perfectly good choice for you, but it's all a matter of what you want to do. And in my case, I felt like a broadening degree like an MBA would be better than a more super specializing degree. Right after the global financial crisis around 2009 or 10, we at McKinsey, I was leading our financial services practice at the time. We at McKinsey were retained to help the finance ministers of the G20 nations develop a position paper on actions to be taken by governments and by the financial system to avoid another global financial crisis. And me and a number of my colleagues from McKinsey, it was a global team actually, with the McKinsey Global Institute and others, worked on this project. A very, very interesting project. Lots of interesting interactions with finance ministers and the people in Federal Reserve and so forth. And we came up with a very interesting position paper that was quite a thoughtful analysis about the various issues with the financial system and what needs to be done and how to address some of the things going forward and to prevent a recurrence. So that's an example of something that could be very, very interesting. Another example, we worked for a large telecom player in the US, and that telecom player, this was at the time of deregulation in the 1990s. That telecom player was actually thinking hard about could they expand into adjacent spaces beyond telecom? Could they use their brand and their network and their technical capabilities to expand into adjacent spaces and create new businesses? And I think that was a very, very interesting engagement as well. So, the nice thing about a place like McKinsey is you get to work on a very, very broad array of very interesting problems. And so I really enjoyed, those are a couple of examples of projects that I really enjoyed. So McKinsey obviously is a leading management consulting firm. It's in over 100 countries, and I think it's a great firm. It's one of the reasons why I decided to stay with McKinsey for as long as I stayed. When I joined the firm, I thought I would be there for maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years. I never imagined I would be there for 35 years. But 3 years turned to 10 and 10 years turned to 30, and I was having a great time, and I never really felt the urge to explore anything else and to leave, which is why I stayed there. You work on, first of all, I love the variety of the work there, because you're working on a very different, you're working on a broad range of clients, you're working on a broad range of problems. And you're working with incredibly talented people. You're working at the senior most levels of industry with the CEO and the C-suite. So by definition, your clients are incredibly smart and interesting people. And also within McKinsey, you're working with the best and the brightest. McKinsey prides itself on really hiring people who are really motivated and driven and super bright and so on. And so you're always working with people who are really interesting and smart and intelligent and exciting. and fun to be around. So the combination of the variety, the different problems and issues that you work on, and the quality of the people you're working with is ultimately what kept me at the firm. And the firm does a very nice job of building a very a culture where there's a lot of, it's easy to dissent around your view on a particular problem or situation. Whether you're the senior partner or whether you're a junior associate working on a problem, you're expected to speak up and state your point of view as to why you believe the client should do X or should do Y or should do Z, etc. So those are things that appeal to me very much at the firm. Consulting is a demanding career, so you do work hard, and some people have trouble managing their lifestyle because you're working quite hard, and so you have to be quite disciplined about how much you want to put into consulting and where you want to draw the line and the boundary between how hard you will work and then your personal life. And some people struggle with that. So if you're the kind of person that, you will continue to work, 17 or 18 hour days, eventually you will burn out and you will realize that you have no life outside your work. And so you have to draw a firm line and say, okay, I'm going to work this much and no more. And if I make it, great. If I don't make it, that's okay. I'll go do something else. Which was the attitude that I had, and I think that's a healthy attitude to have. So be aware of the fact that while consulting gives you a lot of benefits of, as I said, variety, interesting problems, interesting people, the work is very, very hard and rigorous and demanding. So that's one thought for you. The second thought is it's not for everyone. In consulting, you are never the person that is deep on a particular issue and seeing something through all the way into detailed implementation. By definition, you come in there, you provide a point of view, you provide a roadmap, you explain the key initiatives and the key drivers. You may even help with the first several stages of implementation, but you're not going to necessarily sit there and see the project all the way through to final impact. And if you're the kind of person that wants that detailed hands-on impact and the visibility of that impact, then I think consulting may not be for you. You may be better off going into a company and working in that company. The other thing is, if you have a desire to go out and run something, to build something, to be the division head somewhere, to be the CEO somewhere, again, consulting is not that. Consulting, by definition, you're an advisor. So you have to be comfortable and to like the idea of being an advisor, which is different from being a doer. And you will never get the fame and the glory that the CEO of a big top 10 company in India or the US will get. And that may be okay. Or you may say, I want that. I like that. I want to be able to be the CEO of a major company somewhere, etc. And so I don't want consulting. I want to go and do that. Or you may do consulting for a few years and then move over to go off and run a company or run a division somewhere else. But so those are some of the ways that you can think about it. So the two companies you're referring to are both public companies. Where I am on the board of those companies, or I was on the board of those companies. And let me start with Royal Bank of Canada, and then I'll talk about Card Connect. Royal Bank of Canada, the ticker symbol is RY, is a wonderful, well-run bank. They are the largest bank in Canada. They are a top 10 global financial institution by market capitalization, roughly $200 billion Canadian market capitalization. This was before the coronavirus crisis, so it may be a little bit south of that now. So a major institution. They have a large capital markets and investment banking business. They have a large retail and consumer financial services business. They have a large payments and treasury business. They have a large wealth management and asset management franchise. They do business in Canada, in the US, and in Europe, out of the UK. And they were my client at McKinsey for many years, in the last several years before I retired from McKinsey. And I was invited at some point after I retired from McKinsey to join the board. And so since 2015, the last 5 years or so, I've been on the board of RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. And I, as a board member, I also work on two of the committees. I'm on the risk management committee and on the governance committee, and I'm the chair of the risk management committee at RBC. So again, it's been a great experience to be a board member of a top 10 global financial institution. Card Connect is a very different kind of a story. Card Connect is a small, what they call a fintech, a financial technology company. It's a technology-based payments processor. So when you think about Visa, MasterCard, American Express at a merchant, and you swipe that card or you plug in the card in a reader, all of the back-end processing that goes on and the network connectivity and the information flows and the settlement that happens is what a merchant processor does. Card Connect is a company like that. I was invited to join the board because the company was going through a transition from being a private company to being a public company. Public company means listed on the stock market. And so I joined the board. This was in 2016, I think. So I joined the board when it was a private company. We went through the transition to a public company. We spent, I think, a year and a half as a public company. And then another much larger corporation called First Data Corporation, which is a huge payments processor, came in with an offer to buy out Card Connect. And the offer was, for Card Connect shareholders, was a very attractive offer. And so I was on the board then, and we negotiated to sell Card Connect to First Data. And so we sold the company to First Data. So I was on that board for maybe a year and a half or 2 years, but it was short, but it was a very enjoyable experience because I saw it as a private company owned by a PE firm, private equity firm. Then I saw it as a public company, and then I saw it as part of the transition into a strategic buyer like First Data. So those are my two public board experiences in the US and in Canada. Look, I think if you think about COVID-19, clearly it's a short and medium-term significant hit to many, many industries, not the tech industry. The tech industry is obviously booming as a result of COVID-19 in some ways. Look at us on, the equivalent of AirMeet and Zoom. But many industries, including consulting, have had to retrench a little bit. I think most consulting firms are doing fine. They've had some slowdown in activity, but I would think that's going to be quite a temporary and a short-term thing. The thing that typically happens in consulting firms is that the nature of the work and the nature of what clients need and want changes depending on where you are in the economic cycle. So in this environment, clients will need help with maybe cutting costs, or thinking about the reopening strategy, or thinking about the supply chains, etc. Whereas in a pre-COVID environment, they may be thinking about many different kinds of issues, like perhaps growth and expansion. So I think consulting will be impacted a little bit in the short to medium term, but not a huge amount, I don't think. In the long term, and beyond the next year or so, I think consulting will remain a very vibrant industry. And the reason is very simple. The reason is because the world is getting more and more and more complicated, and the pace of change and just the issues that companies have to deal with today. Whether you think about geopolitics, or whether you think about the pace of technology, or whether you think about the shifts in consumer behavior, there are massive changes that will continue to occur for decades. And anytime you have big, complex changes, in the environment that businesses operate in, it makes it hard for businesses to continue on their current course and path. They need to think about other possibilities and other scenarios and contingency plans and so on. And that's where the role of consultants comes in very helpful, because consultants have a broader perspective. They serve multiple companies across multiple industries. It's easier for them to connect the dots. And importantly, they have more time and focus on these kinds of forward-looking issues than if you're a senior manager in a company. Obviously, you have a real job to deliver earnings and to meet customer demand and so forth. And so you just have less time to think about the future. And so for all those reasons, I think consulting will remain actually a very viable and vibrant field going well into the future. Just talk more broadly about, I think, what is required over time to be successful. And you could say it's to be successful in the business world. I'll make these points about consulting, but I think it's generally true in the business world as well, or in general. I think the first and foremost is as something I was mentioning earlier, which is problem solving. The ability to look at any situation, any complicated problem, and to step back and think about it deeply from multiple angles, and to question assumptions, and to come up with a point of view. I think that's a powerful thing, and it's a very, very important skill that one needs to learn over time. Most of you are incredibly intelligent people, having come out of IIT, otherwise you would not have gotten there in the first place. But to hone that intelligence and to use it in very diverse situations that you will encounter, where problems don't fall neatly into a specific categories, and your ability to use first principles problem solving to come up with a point of view is actually very, very, very important. Very important no matter what you end up doing. It's certainly very important in consulting. So that would be the first thing I would say. Develop that skill. Problems in the real world don't fall neatly into buckets. This is not a math problem or a physics problem or a marketing problem or a sales problem or an operations problem or a technology problem. Problems in the real world tend to be problems. They tend to be general problems that cut across multiple dimensions, right? And so you need to think about them in an integrated, holistic way and come up with an integrated, holistic solution, including, by the way, if you're a senior person in a company, how do you get the people in that company or division to align behind the new path that you want to go down, which is a very, very complicated thing because it involves changing the behavior of lots and lots and lots of people who are used to doing things a particular way. So that's I would say is the first thing, is problem solving. The second is, I would say, some level of drive, energy, focus, hard work, diligence, conscientiousness, commitment, all those words. The ability to go deep on something, to work hard at something, to diligently and conscientiously pursue something, and to be resilient about it, to bounce back from setbacks, to recover from mistakes, to continue on that path that you're working on. So this idea of hard work, passion, drive, energy is very, very important. And that's something that you need in consulting. Again, it's something I think you need anywhere to be successful. And then the third is, I would say, some kind of the ability to work with others, right? In some way, shape or form. The ability to deal effectively with a very, very diverse range of people with diverse backgrounds, diverse skill sets, and to harness them and to help them be the best that they can be, right? Because ultimately, as you get more senior, you need to have people work effectively with you, and you need to have people try to follow you, and sometimes you need to try to follow them. But I think this idea of teaming effectively with a diverse array of people towards a common goal is a very, very important thing. And I wouldn't take it for granted. Many people cannot do that. Many people struggle to do that and to work with a very broad, diverse range of people with diverse backgrounds and diverse capabilities and diverse skill sets. So those would be the three things I would call out as being things that are that I found useful for myself personally, and I think would be useful for you as you think about the future. In consulting in particular, there is a fourth thing, which is less relevant if you're not in consulting, but that is the ability to work with very senior executives in major corporations and to build trust-based relationships with them. Because ultimately, as a senior consultant, what you're doing is you're trying to engage with senior executives on their biggest problems, and that only happens if they trust you to discuss those problems with them, to invite you into their thought process, to engage you not just on their issues, but perhaps even around the politics of what they're facing internally within their company, with their board, with their management team, etc., etc. Those things don't happen naturally without a lot of investment in building trust-based relationships. That's another thing that is a particular thing that it's important for consultants.